Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stand. This is your latest Manchester United news and transfer news, and we're going to be talking off, I suppose it's not surprising, interesting story this morning coming out that Newcastle United have already made inquiries with Manchester United for the signing of Anthony Martial in January. Will Donny follow that route? Will other players follow that route? I certainly think that the Newcastle dynamic will change football and mean that, you know, they've got to buy certain players very, very quickly. And I think Anthony Martial, it's interesting where this is coming from. I certainly think that Anthony Martial does tick a lot of the boxes for what Newcastle would be looking for. And ultimately, looking around social media this morning, a lot of United fans saying they would do it. I wouldn't do it, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And we'll also be talking about Donny, interest in Donny from here and abroad as well. But first of all, I love doing these integrations. We are sponsored by Boohooman again on the show this morning. I'm wearing some of their range, and Boohooman have a brand new range out with some amazing new clothing items to make sure you always look your absolute best, like I do this morning. But as always, they want to interact with you. It's time to put some fun facts down about how active players have been whilst playing for Manchester United. And this week, Boohooman would like to see if the live chat can guess which 4 players have won the Ballon d'Or whilst playing for Manchester United. Now, I've got a couple of clues for you, and as always, the first person I see in the chat that gets it right gets a United Stand style congratulations. So here are the clues. The 4 winners of the Ballon d'Or who played for United have come from the following countries: Scotland, England, Northern Ireland and Portugal. They won their trophies in the following years: 64, 66, 68 and 2008. All of the players have finished their careers at other clubs, with the exception of one who is still playing for Manchester United but has played for other clubs in the past. So let me know in the chat if you know who the 4 are. Now, I would know this, but I wasn't quite alive then, but I would know this. And done. I'll give it to Suvajit Banerjee. He says Dennis Law, George Best, Bobby Charlton, and of course Cristiano Ronaldo. So well done there, that man. The answer, of course, is Law in 64, Bobby Charlton in 66, Best in 68, and of course Cristiano Ronaldo in 2008. So big up to Boohooman. I love the way they interact with our audience. As always, you can get 40% off through any of the Boohooman active range that is in the discount by using the code United Stand at checkout. As you can see, I'm wearing some of the Boohooman active range this morning. Thank you very much to Boohooman for supporting United Stand as ever. And as I said, video description link, 40% off with the code United Stand. And I just love the way they give us something interactive because they're thinking of you. Right, let's move on with the show. Just on the Ballon d'Or, I'm surprised my name's not on the Ballon d'Or list. It's that bloody long. I've seen other clubs going, oh look, we've got a Ballon d'Or rep for the first time in 10 years. That's because every player in history is nominated this year. I mean, what happened to just having five nominees? Why do they have to be bloody 40 or however many there is? I'm surprised Fred's not in there. There's that many. But look, let's get into the show. So I got a message last night from somebody that's very good. They wouldn't want me to shout their name out, but they said you might want to check this article on Stretty News about Anthony Martial, and that Newcastle are interested in bringing Anthony Martial to Newcastle as part of their new big spend in January. So it makes a lot of sense, this story, and it's not, it's well sourced. And look, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. It's still October, early October. But I was speaking about this, I don't know whether I was talking about it on this channel or on That's Football, that the sort of signing Newcastle make at the start is not going to be Kylian Mbappe. It's not going to be Erling Haaland. It's not going to be that sort of signing in the next 12 months. Because if you look at the early days of Chelsea or the early days of Manchester City, when you're not a Champions League club, you can't just go and say, Mbappe, come here. He's going to go, well, look, I don't care what money you're going to give me. You're a nothing club at the moment. I'm going to go to Real Madrid. The minute Newcastle have got Champions League football, like it happened with Man City, that's when you get your Agueros and people like that. So Newcastle will be looking at, can we offer Fred to Newcastle, since Mikel Roach? Look, there's certain players I'd give to Newcastle and hopefully they'd pay money. But I think if you are Newcastle, remember I said this before, you're looking at Jesse Lingard, James Maddison. I think they want Pope in goal from Burnley. These are the sort of first tier signings that Newcastle are going to look for. The best possible player they can get to make them get near the top 4 that they can actually bring to the club as part of this first phase. They're not going to get the Mbappes or the De Bruynes straight away. In 3 or 4 years they will do, but the first 2 years they're going to have to get the best they can get. And Anthony Martial, to be honest with you, fits Newcastle like a glove. It's just whether Martial wants to stay in the Premier League, which we'll talk about in a minute. But Anthony, I saw something the other day. In Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's 3 years here, Anthony Martial is in the top 4 for goals and assists. So this perception that he's a flop and he's useless is a joke. Like, last season he had a bad season. He scored a goal against Everton the other week. You know, he's not a bad player. I actually predicted Martial was going to have a big season this year. I think that's been destroyed by Ronaldo, and quite rightly so. You bring Ronaldo in, that's going to be less chances for Martial. So Newcastle expressing an interest in Martial. If I was in charge of Newcastle and I was looking at the rebuild, I mean, it's like, you know, we've all got ideas. We've all played Football Manager and FIFA, so it's not like, oh, Goldbridge's ideas are going to be revolutionary. You'd have your own ideas. But if I was owner of Newcastle, I'm looking to rebuild that team, Man United would be one of my first stops, because Manchester United players, whether they succeed or fail, they've got a real understanding of what playing at a big club's all about. And we're top heavy. We've got a massively inflated senior squad. So if I was Newcastle, I'd look at Manchester United and I'd go, Martial, Van der Beek, straight away, those 2 players are perfect for what we want. They're not playing, they're still in their mid-20s, and they're top quality players who play international football that United are looking to sell. And we'll get them for a reasonable price. They're not going to want 100 million. So look, we'll talk about Donny in a minute, but I think in relation to Anthony Martial, proven Premier League goal scorer, I think he would do really well at an Arsenal or a Newcastle or a Spurs, or I think he would do well at that sort of look, because Newcastle are, with all due respect to Arsenal and Spurs, you are fighting between 4th and 8th. And I think that's where Newcastle want to be ASAP. And they know they can't fight for the top 4 just yet. So when I say Martial will do well at Arsenal, Spurs and Newcastle, I put Newcastle straight into that category, because that's where they're going to want to be. And I think Newcastle with Anthony Martial in that team, I think he's perfect for what they want. They want a goal scorer, a quality player who, ideally they want Mbappe and Haaland, but they're not at that stage yet. So I think Martial ticks a lot of boxes for Newcastle if he fancies it. From a United point of view, they're probably not going to get many clubs that knock on the door and say, there's 50 million. So I think for United, they'll probably snap the hands off as well. The question is whether Anthony Martial wants to do it. Can't we sell them Henderson? Why would they want Pope over Henderson? Henderson wants first team football. He can go there, 40 million. Thanks, says Michelle. Again, look, you know what? Absolutely, I applaud that. Absolutely brilliant. That would be a brilliant move for Dean Henderson. It would be a brilliant move for Newcastle, and it would be a brilliant move for Manchester United. We'd get the money, he'd get first team football, and Newcastle would get potentially England's number 1. I think, Dean Henderson to Newcastle, it would be perfect. If I was Dean Henderson, I'd be looking at that and going, you know what? I fancy that. I fancy that project. I would be their number 1. The team's going to be a Champions League club in the very near future. I'd be England's number 1. Yeah, but that's probably why they're looking at Pope, because Pope's probably looking at it in the same way. But no, you're right, Dean Henderson would be perfect. And there's probably a few players at United it would be perfect for. But keeping it with Martial, can I just offer this opinion? I disagree. Van der Beek would be great signing for Newcastle. Bet Newcastle do their training ground and stadium up before United, says Dazzo. Again, I think Van der Beek would be another one. But let's stick to Martial. Would you like to see Martial going to Newcastle, and why? Because I just want to get some of those. FIFA Gangster says you were out yesterday, weren't you? Nope. I don't know what you're trying to insinuate there. We're looking at Coutinho as well, Mark. Yeah, Coutinho would be another one in the first wave. And you look at Man City, Robinho. Robinho. What do they have? Ireland, Sean Wright-Phillips they brought back. That's the sort of player that Newcastle are going to look in the first wave, because they're not going to get the tier 1 signings. They're going to have to look at tier 2, tier 3 that's going to make them a better team very, very quickly. Mark, do you think Pogba could end up at Newcastle, says Thomas? I don't think Paul Pogba will end up at Newcastle. I think it's 2 years too soon. I don't think Paul Pogba would go there, because Paul Pogba wants to win Premier Leagues and Champions Leagues, and Newcastle will not be doing that for at least, I think, 3 years. The first time Newcastle will win a Premier League is probably 2025. I can't see them winning it any sooner than that, because they're going to need Premier League winning quality players, and to do that they need top 4 Champions League first. Loan to buy for 50 million, Jones and Fred for free, says Mikael Roach. But look, would you sell Martial? Stephen Dixon says Martial can leave, and also Eric Bays, another one. There's a few at United. Newcastle career mode. I'm not doing a Newcastle career mode. I'm doing my United career mode at 4. What a day! What a day! What a day! United stand now. FIFA career mode at 4 o'clock on Twitch. England watch along at 8. 7 o'clock United stand show, and then 4 o'clock in the morning, Fury versus Wilder. If you want to get on the Goldbridge schedule, get on the schedule. But I'm not doing a Newcastle career mode. No. It's a cheat code, isn't it? But I look forward to watching the Newcastle career mode in real life. And I think a manager is very important for them. But look, let's talk about Martial. Let's talk about Manchester United. Martial would be the main man at Newcastle, says Tuto. I don't think that Manchester United would be wrong to sell Anthony Martial. And the reasons for that is the same reason I've spoken about people like Pogba in the past and leaving and Van der Beek leaving, and understanding why a player would want to leave. And I think for Anthony Martial, the exit door looms, and I think it's nothing to do with ability. I think last season goes against him, but I think the fact that if Martial had come through the youth setup, it would be a different story. If he's Marcus Rashford or Mason Greenwood, this is a different story. At the end of the day, Anthony Martial is French, and therefore we have this problem around Manchester United and in England media as well, where if you are a foreign player, you don't get the same affection as a youth player or an English player. Tell me I'm wrong. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody particularly, but stereotypically, at United, De Gea has a bad game, they're all over him. Bruno, Pogba, Martial. But if it's an English player or a youth player, it's very, very different. So I don't see Martial's future at Manchester United in the current setup. We've now got Ronaldo, Cavani are ahead of him, and obviously you've got Lingard back, you've got Sancho, you've got Greenwood, you've got Rashford. So Martial, as much as I think Martial's good enough to play for Manchester United, and I felt he'd have a big season, I think that the doors are closed for him. And I think Ollie's made that decision already. And I don't think he can wait about to see whether Ollie's going to be the right man or not, because he's in the French squad. He's playing, he's in that French squad. And he's not going to be in that French squad for very long because he's not playing for Manchester United. Now, if he goes to Newcastle, I think Newcastle's a great place to be for any player. Now, if Martial went to Newcastle last week and played for Steve Bruce, forget it. You're never going to play for France again. But if Martial goes to Newcastle with whoever they're going to bring in, and this vibrant, exciting side that everybody knows is pretty much guaranteed to be a top 4 side in the next 2 years, then his French career is going to escalate, and his profile is going to escalate. On top of that, he's going to get very good wages. The problem with Anthony Martial is that he's on about 200, 250 grand a week. Nobody can afford that. Newcastle can. So it's just whether Martial wants to stay in the Premier League and go to Newcastle. Or does Martial want to go and play for PSG? Or does he want to go and play in Italy? And that's the thing. I think that's what will stop this deal. I like Martial. And I've got to say right here, right now, I'm not one of those fans that, get out of my club. He's got a bad attitude. He's lazy. I know for a fact all those 3 things, 2 of those things are wrong. He's not lazy and he's not got a bad attitude. It's a personality. He's got quite a reserved, shy personality. That's why he doesn't do loads of bloody sponsorship deals and everything like that. I think that if he went to a Newcastle, I would wish him all the best, and I would actually probably follow his career because I like Martial. I already have. I always have. But I do think it's time for him to go. And that's hard because I'd like him, but I do think it's time for him to go. I don't see a path to the first team. We've got too many players, and I think it's time to go. And I think he'd get good money. He'd get a really good project. And I think we'd get good money as well. And I think it'd be a good deal for Newcastle. It's very rare that you get a deal where you go, I like the player, but he needs to go. He'll get the wages he wants. Newcastle will get a really good player. We'll get fair money. And, I think everybody's a winner. So I do think that this would be a very good deal. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but I do think it's a good deal. And, as I said, read it in Straight News last night, tipped off by somebody who just... quite orchestrative of that article. Contact made apparently between Manchester United and Newcastle and Tony Martial for a move in January. And I think let's see what happens. I mean, of course, Newcastle have got so much money, they might not go for Martial. They might go for a Calvert-Lewin or something like that. But I don't think they'll get a Calvert-Lewin. And I think that the world of football's changed a lot. Tony moving would be horrible. You know he'd do well. 70 million in return wouldn't be terrible, though, says Sam. I don't think we'll get anywhere near 70. JJ says, what do you think will happen with Ahmad when he comes back from injury? Also, do you think there will be more billionaires buying teams like Newcastle? I'll come back to that, JJ. If Tony goes, then I look back with only good memories, says Daniel Kerr. Exactly. I've loved having Anthony Martial at Manchester United. In the main, I think it's been great. There's been 2 bad periods, obviously last season and when Mourinho brought Sanchez and basically screwed him over. But I do think he's been one of my favourite players at United. But I just don't see it. I can't see it anymore. And you mentioned Ahmad. I don't see him getting much game time at United. Palestri's not getting game time at Alaves. You know, some of these recent signings, we've just got too many players. And it's a bit like Ollie's acted like a kid in a sweet shop and said, I'll have that, and that. And he just can't eat it all. There's too much there for him. And I think it's a problem. And I think for Martial it'd be good. But look, you know, as I said before, if I'm in charge of Newcastle and I'm looking at rebuilding that team very, very quickly, there's a lot of players you can get hold of that are going to be reasonably priced, that are going to massively improve you. And looking at United, like somebody said, Dean Henderson would be a brilliant signing for Newcastle and we'd get probably 40 million. Martial would be a brilliant signing for Newcastle and we'd probably get 40 million. Eric Bailly, I think, would be a very good signing for Newcastle. Or a Lindelof. They'd be very good signings for Newcastle. You're probably going to get 30 million for them. Donny van de Beek. I mean, let's talk about Donny van de Beek. That 70 million was definitely on the ambitious side with their new Saudi owners, says Sam. I want to talk about Donny van de Beek. Please smash a like on the video, by the way. Make sure you subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. But in relation to Donny van de Beek, we'll talk about that in a minute, but I do think there was an interesting point there from JJ that I don't want to ignore, and that is, do you think there will be more billionaire owners in the Premier League? And categorically, 100% yes. I think that there are already a lot of billionaire owners. Everton are rich, Leicester are rich, Villa are rich, so there's a lot of clubs already that have got money, but I just think it's the way that we're run. Hopefully will very soon become obsolete. I think we are hindered by the Glazers, and we all know this. Manchester United has spent £1 billion in the last 10 years, but we should have spent 2 because we've generated that sort of profit. We could have spent 2 billion because it's our money. Unfortunately, half of that 2 billion has ended up going out on debt and dividends and everything else because the Glazers are business people. They bought us on debt. They're here to make money. They're not here to make us winners. They're here to make us winners and make money. And that doesn't go hand in hand when you've got Man City who've got rich owners who just want to win. You can't win and make money. That's not going to happen. You know, football's an entertainment business. People are buying football clubs because they've got spare cash. Billions of spare cash. I would liken it to a millionaire who has, you know, made all the money they've got loads of money in the bank, and they just want to collect, you know, high-end collectible cars. And I'm not talking about the little Matchbox cars. I'm talking about real Ferraris on their drive, and they're just doing it as a hobby. That is the best way of explaining how football's gone. You've got these people like Liverpool owners, Arsenal owners, and Manchester United owners who are rich people who see football as a cash cow. And they bought these clubs because they see it as a way to make money. They see it as, you know, like buying McDonald's or something like that. It's not a hobby, it's a business. They're buying a thriving business to make money. The issue is, in that same arena, you've got people who are buying clubs like they're just so rich, they just want to have a bit of fun. Man City, Chelsea, and now Newcastle. How can you compete when you're trying to use a club to make money against people who are using it as a hobby to win trophies? It doesn't go together. Unfortunately, United are owned by people who want to treat us as a business. And I spoke about this more in depth on the show last night, but it's a problem for United. It's a real problem. And we can all get excited about Ronaldo. We can all get excited about being in a title race, but, you know, that's a very short-term thing. And many people think we can't win the title anyway. So long-term, it's going to get harder to win the title. I don't care what anybody says. Varane, Ronaldo, Bruno, Pogba. You know what? Maybe we've got a chance this year, but it's going to get harder and harder because we can't compete with these clubs, not under the current ownership. And the sad thing is, if we were acquired by a very rich owner who just wanted us to win trophies, we make more money than anybody else as well. So we'd be more of a, you know, they'd have to spend less money on United because we make so much money. Love the show, hate the international weekends, think Martial's time is done as better players available in the squad, says Chris Hall. Interestingly, where Newcastle will have a bit of a problem, by the way, just before I talk about Donny, when Man City came onto the page or Chelsea came onto the page, a lot of other clubs didn't have a lot of money. Like, I remember Man City taking Milner from Villa, and they got him for a very reasonable price. Fast forward 10 years, Man City want Grealish, they have to break the transfer record and pay £100 million. That's because Villa have got money. That's because Everton have got money. A lot of Premier League clubs have got money now. So if United want to get a Leicester player, instead of getting Harry Maguire for 35 million, you're paying 80 million. Newcastle will have this problem because Newcastle might look at Everton and go, we quite fancy Calvert-Lewin from Everton. From Villa, quite like McGinn. Well, straight away, Everton are rich. They're going to want 100 million for Calvert-Lewin. Villa ain't short of a few quid. They're going to want 50 million for McGinn. So it becomes difficult. You can't just go, let's go and buy some of the best players from some of the lesser Premier League clubs because those clubs are rich. So Newcastle are going to have to scout well. They're going to have to look into France. They're going to have to look into other clubs, where they can get the bargains. But more importantly, when it comes to United, you're going to have to look at clubs like United who've got very big squads who need to offload players because that's where the bargains are. I think 10 years ago, if you were a rich club, your bargain was to go to Leicester or Villa because they need the money and get their best player. I think the bargain now is to go to the big clubs and look at the players that aren't being used much. Bernardo Silva maybe at Man City. Obviously, we've mentioned Martial, Van der Beek, Henderson at United. There's a few. If you look at Chelsea, maybe a Ross Barkley or something like that. That's where Newcastle can get value for money. And we can benefit from that at United because we can trim the squad and remove some players that clearly aren't going to get used by Ollie. And A says Newcastle can buy every Premier League team now. They can't. Financial fair play has disappeared, but it's still there to a certain extent. You can't spend, if Newcastle's revenue is 50 million, they can't spend 200 million because they're spending beyond their revenue. So they've got to boost things first of all. Trim the squad. Yeah, that's not quite what we're doing. So Newcastle may sign Tchouaméni, says Himanshu. He'd be perfect for Newcastle. That's exactly the sort of player I would go for if I was Newcastle because he'll be cheap and he's also going to be a superstar. So exactly, that's the sort of player that you should look at. Gazzo says, what about Lingard? I think there's a few players. Look, we're talking about Martial because Newcastle have apparently made inquiries to buy Martial in January. Lingard to Newcastle would be good. Henderson to Newcastle. Donny. Now, Donny, Corriere dello Sport yesterday were talking about Juventus and Donny van der Beek. It seems to me, if Van der Beek leaves, there's a lot of interest in Italy. Inter Milan were mentioned in the summer. Juventus have been mentioned now. Again, I think Newcastle would be a very good move for Donny van der Beek. A very good move. At his age, he's just 24? He could prove himself in the Premier League. They'd pay him good wages. He'd get back in the Dutch squad very, very quickly. And he'd be a fundamental. And a fundamental is a player that I think Newcastle will have a high rotation of players. I think there's only one player in that Newcastle squad that I think will be in that team in 2 years' time, and that's St. Maximin. I think the manager, the coaches, the players, they're going to disappear in no time. But a fundamental is a player that you buy and stays at that football club. Like Vincent Kompany was a fundamental of Man City. He was one of their first signings and he stayed there and became the captain. I think that if you buy a Martial or a Van der Beek or a Dean Henderson from Manchester United and take them to Newcastle, I think those three players would be fundamentals. And that, what I mean by that is in a high rotation of players to try and get where they need to get, I think that those three players would stay at Newcastle no matter how the team builds. I think Van der Beek would still be in that team if they did get a hold of a Haaland or someone like that. So Van der Beek to Newcastle would be a good deal. And I think Newcastle would be silly not to look at that. But it saddens me. With Martial, I can see that it's probably the best for everybody. There's no grudge. There's no get out of my club. I just think that'd be a great deal for Martial, Newcastle and United. For Van der Beek, I think it'd be a great deal for Van der Beek. I think it'd be a great deal for Newcastle. I think Man United would be very happy about it. But as a Man United fan, I'd be very, very disappointed about it because I just think that Van der Beek has been ruined by Manchester United. And I think that, to sit here and say, well, we'll get our money back and he can go to Newcastle. I'd be following him. I'd be watching Newcastle every week if Van der Beek went there. I'd be like, what have we missed out on here? So I still harbour hopes that Donny van de Beek will end up being a big important player at Manchester United, but certainly there's, we've had Romano on last Monday about this, and we've spoken about it many times. I actually remember having Romano on the show 3 months before we bought Donny, and I was asked, it was towards the end of the show, we'd asked him everything that was sort of credible, and I'd said, Donny van de Beek's a player I really like Fabrizio. What about him and leaving Ajax? And it was just speculative. And he was like, no, I've not heard anything about Manchester United, but he's a fantastic player. And, there's a lot of big clubs looking at him. And 3 months later, we bought him. And it was like, wow, that we were only just talking about him 3 months before, like many of you were. It wasn't like we were even linked. It was just like a dream signing in many ways. There will be a load of clubs queuing up to sign Donny van de Beek. His career is on its knees. Van Gaal won't even select him for the international squad, quite rightly. Why would you pick a player that's not playing football? But, there's a star in the making there, and there'll be the quality of club that's looking at him will evidence the quality of player that everyone believes he is. So, it'll be very interesting. I don't think Van de Beek will end up going to Newcastle. I think that United PR are not thick. I think United will be very, very careful about letting Donny van de Beek stay in the Premier League, because they'll just want to avoid the embarrassment. I would guarantee you this: if Newcastle offered £45 million for Donny van de Beek in January, and Inter Milan offered 35, they'd sell him to Inter Milan and take the 10 million hit. They will not want Donny van de Beek in the Premier League, because if Donny van de Beek goes to Serie A and plays really well, you know what people will say. Well, yeah, he's performing in a slower league. He couldn't cut it in the Premier League. Whereas if he goes to Newcastle or Everton and performs really well, it'll be like, well, that's just embarrassing. So as much as United are always about money, I guarantee you they'd take a 10 million loss to not have him stay in the Premier League. John Eastwood says, don't talk daft. Mate, don't talk daft doesn't mean anything. That's just you and your sad little opinion trying to make a point. I've just expanded my opinion on why. Don't talk daft doesn't wash. You genuinely think Manchester United would let Donny van de Beek go to Everton and run the risk of him, becoming one of the best midfielders in the league and make themselves look stupid? They won't do that. Manchester United's run on PR. If you know anything about Manchester United, it's run on PR. We employ people who monitor socials and run algorithms on what sort of knobhead tweet's going to work to get people going, interactive at a time when the performance is not very good on the pitch. We're 100% as a football club entwined and interlinked with mood of the fans. They are not going to run a potential PR disaster of letting Donny van de Beek go to a Premier League club and succeed when we've barely played him for 2 years at United. It would be better if Van de Beek had played a lot and been a bit of a flop. We've had plenty of players like that, but he's not even really been given a chance. So Van de Beek, when he's allowed to leave United, needs to be as far away from Manchester as possible, because you cannot buy a player for £35 million, barely use them for 2 years, then let them go to a Premier League club where they run the risk of having a point to prove A, but also B, being a player that a lot of people think he is, and then he goes and tears it up. It'll be a disaster for United. Van de Beek ruined by Ollie, not Man United. I think he'll be a quality player if he leaves. What a shame. Mark, please say hello to my daughter, says Casing. Kaylee is smart. Hello to Kaylee then. Thank you for the super chat. Good morning. Is Fred a flop, Mark, says Angela? For the price tag, yes. I mean, look, yes, he is. Ali says, I'd be devastated if Donny and Tony leave and we keep Jesse, Mata, Fred and Jones. Well, I suppose that's another way of looking at it, that you've got... Werner would be an interesting one to Newcastle as well, but if I had the choice between Werner and Martial, I'd go with Martial anyway. I like Timo Werner, but Martial's a better Premier League striker. He's more proven. He won't get in the Everton midfield anyway, says Robert McCormack. I think he would. I think the way Everton play, they would play him ahead of Doucouré and Allen. They'd play him as a sort of attacking 8, which is what many people think he is. But, it'll be interesting to see how this develops. I think Newcastle are going to create a lot of activity. But Fred's a flop for me. I don't know what anybody else thinks. I think Fred is a flop for me because I wouldn't describe him as a Schneiderlin type flop or a bad flop, but the reason I'd say he's a flop is because of how much we paid for him. We spent £50 million on him. Like, I think Fred, if we'd spent 30 million on Fred, you could say he's been okay. But for 50 million quid, he ain't a £50 million player. I don't know who scouted him. There was always that myth that Shakhtar, when we offered 50 million, were like laughing and something like that. I don't know whether that was actually true or it was just a myth. There was like this email apparently that Shakhtar just couldn't believe somebody paid £50 million for him. I think it was actually some sort of conspiracy theory. I don't think it was actually true. But £50 million, and let's not forget, it was £50 million, was it 5 or 4 years ago? So with inflation, that's probably 60, 70 million. I mean, he's just not that level of a player. You'd expect to get something better than that. And I personally think that we just did what we did with Sanchez, with Fred. We knew Man City wanted him, and therefore we thought, oh, he must be a good player, and we outbid him. And look, I think there's a good player in Fred, and he has played well for us, but he's just not a £50 million player. He wears his heart on his sleeve, he runs around a lot, he's got a smile on his face, but footballing-wise, I think he's bang average. I really do. I think if you take the Brazilian name away from him, I think if Fred was English, he'd be Tom Davies at Everton. An honest, hard-working player, but I don't see any difference between that lad at Everton, the one who wears the ponytail, and Fred. I think he's an English Tom Davies, a Brazilian Tom Davies. I think that's what he is. And some people might say you're being a bit harsh on Davies there, but that's the sort of level of player I think he is. And I just think because he was Brazilian and he's got a one-word name, we paid 50 million quid for him from a league that is totally an unreliable league. You can't say that a player playing in that league is definitely going to be successful. Mark, a bit off topic. I play under 12 Sunday league football, and our coach even says get the ball down and play. Just shows Ollie's tactics are no good. Says JJ. Yeah, well, football was played. Grass was made on the ground, not in the sky, was it? It's funny. I was talking to Ricky about this the other day. He was watching the French game, and he said it's amazing how Pogba plays for France compared to how he plays for Manchester United. He's there for France. He's not playing too many risky passes. He's expressive. He's running the midfield. He's playing the simple ball. He's energetic. You see him in a United shirt. He looks lack of focus. He's hitting too many, risky passes. And I don't know how Ricky was phrasing it. I don't know whether he was sort of like saying Pogba doesn't give a shit when he plays for United. He just likes to play for France, which some of you might agree with. But I said to Ricky, to be honest with you, that's just tactics. It's confidence and tactics. When he's playing for France, he's at ease with the system and he knows his role in the team. When he plays for Manchester United, he doesn't know whether he's on the left wing or he's a centre midfielder. And I think that's a big thing. I really do. How can you have a player like Paul Pogba who doesn't know whether he's on the bench, on the left wing or in the midfield? And if he's in the midfield, he doesn't know whether he's playing with Fred, McTominay or Matic. It's a constant upheaval for Pogba. And also, let's not forget, I watched the game against Young Boys, I watched the game against Villarreal, and the amount of long balls our centre-backs are hitting is a joke. An absolute joke. And that's a tactical decision. And I think we're going to hit more long balls now. Do you know why I think we're going to hit more long balls now? Because Rashford's rapid. And Rashford can get in behind the back four. So I think we're going to hit more and more long balls now. I hope I'm going to be wrong, but I think we will. I really, really do. France versus Spain tomorrow night. Yep, it is. And Fred would be a great side. If Newcastle are doing some scouting, I genuinely think Fred would be a brilliant signing for Newcastle. In fact, you know what? I think McTominay and Fred for Newcastle would be brilliant. Look at what they did last year. We got second place with McTominay and Fred in the midfield. If you want top four, McTominay and Fred, combined package, 60 million, top four, it's on. It's on. You know what? It worries me. It worries me that Newcastle might have the intelligence to go and buy McTominay and Fred for 60 million. Because, you know what? There'll be a real threat with those two in the midfield. I just hope no one from Newcastle is watching this show or letting them know that McTominay and Fred for 60 million would revolutionise their midfield. And, I think they definitely get top four, which is their first step. So let's hope no one from Newcastle is watching. I'm completely taking the piss there, just in case anyone really thinks that's true. Ollie wouldn't sell him anyway. Ollie would go, no, I want to not. They're priceless. Some things are not for sale. They're not for sale. Anyway. Big day ahead. What a day. We've got United Stand at 7 tonight. We've got an England watch along at 8. I've got my Man United FIFA career mode at 4. And then we've got the boxing early hours of the morning, Wilder against Fury. So I'm doing I'm very busy today. I've got lots and lots to do. But you can share it with me if you want to. Lots and lots to watch. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, because that's where I post out all the links, at Mark Goldbridge. We'll be back on here at 7 o'clock. Got a really good show tonight, actually. Very interactive. So make sure you tune in for that again. Do you have an idea why America's players don't work, says Avashik? Well, they don't work at United. But Brazilian players don't really tend to do that well at United, and I don't know why. I think it must just be coincidence, because there's plenty of Brazilian players that have done well in the Premier League. I mean, Man City have had great success with Brazilian players, so yeah, I don't know what that's all about. Barney from India has crossed his net worth $100 billion today. He has changed the football scene in India. I hope he can get United too, says Aditya. Look, at the end of the day, I think the owners of Newcastle are way richer than the owners of Chelsea and Man City. But at the end of the day, you get to a certain level of wealth and it doesn't really matter. You just need to have a wealthy owner that doesn't want to run you like a business. And unfortunately, we've got owners who are wealthy because of Manchester United. You know, they bought us to get even richer. They didn't buy us to make our lives richer. So, you know, it's going to be a problem, and it's going to get worse and worse, I'm afraid. But look, let's see what happens. I think it'd be a good move for Martial. Get your comments in below. Make sure you smash a like on the video and subscribe. And of course, Boohoo Man, 40% off with the code United Stand. Links in the video description. You can get yourself some nice active wear range like I've got if you're getting down on the gym, or you're playing football, you fancy a run, or you just want to look cool around the house. Speak to you all in a bit. Thanks for watching.